My brother's wedding photos popped up on my Facebook feed, 200 guests by the lake, our entire family there. I wasn't invited. I didn't say a word. 4 days later, my dad messaged me, "Your brother is devastated you never reached out." My own brother married my ex-girlfriend, and my entire family helped him keep it a secret. I found out on Facebook. What would you do when your own flesh and blood betrays you so profoundly? It forces you to question everything. Okay, so picture this, it was a slow Thursday morning, and I was scrolling through Facebook. You know, just minding my own business. Then the first photo popped up. A beautiful lakeside view, rows of white chairs, string lights woven through birch trees. Then more. A dance floor, a tiered cake, people laughing, wine glasses clinking. And then, smack in the center of one picture, my brother Nate in a tuxedo, grinning with a woman in a white dress. I paused. Refreshed the screen. More photos kept loading, Nate and Alyssa's perfect day, someone had captioned it. I blinked. My thumb hovered, frozen. I wasn't there. I wasn't even invited. And every single other person in our family was. Aunt Debbie with her signature ugly silver clutch. My cousins from mom's side, even the one who lives all the way in Oregon. Uncle Mike with his stupid fishing hat, somehow still visible even in formal wear. All of them packed into shot after shot, like some big, joyful reunion I didn't even know happened until right then. My name's Luke. I'm 33 years old, and apparently, I don't exist to my own family. I scrolled down that rabbit hole. There were over 200 guests tagged. My parents looked absolutely radiant. Mom was in that forest green dress she always said she was saving for something important. Dad had that too tight smile he reserves for formal occasions and, let's be honest, hiding stress. Alyssa's family looked thrilled, posing beside a gorgeous lakeside arch. And then the bridal party shot, 6 groomsmen, 5 bridesmaids. No me. No call. No save the date. Not even a vague group text with a time and place I could have ignored. It wasn't a mistake. They hadn't forgotten me. I had been excluded. Fully. Deliberately. Coldly. I just sat there, heart pounding in my ears, while the comments rolled in. Best day ever. Can't believe how beautiful it was. So happy to celebrate with you all. I locked my phone. I unlocked it again 30 seconds later. Still there. Still real. I went back to my texts, just to double check. Nothing from Nate. Not in weeks. The last message from him was back in April, a meme about some retro game we used to play as kids. It didn't even get a reply. Then one from Dad in June, just a generic, happy birthday, bud. No mention of any upcoming wedding. No invite. No hint. I hadn't even met Alyssa. I didn't know what she looked like until that very moment. Mid-scroll, mid-stomach drop. I hadn't known her name. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't leave a comment. I didn't hit like. 4 days later, a message pinged onto my screen from Dad, "Your brother is heartbroken. You didn't reach out." I stared at it for a while. Not, "We're sorry you weren't invited." Not, "Let's explain." Just that. As if I had wronged them by not pretending I didn't notice the entire family celebrated something without me. As if I owed them something. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not yet. I just sat there with the weight of it, wondering when exactly I had been cut out and why no one had the guts to tell me. It's not like Nate and I were strangers. We grew up like most brothers, occasional fights, shared video games, switching chores when we thought we could get away with it. We drifted some after college, sure. He got into corporate finance, I started freelancing as a web developer, doing contract gigs. We didn't see each other every week, but we still exchanged birthday wishes, showed up to family holidays, grabbed drinks when we were in the same city. When our cousin Jeff died last year, we sat together at the funeral. He even crashed on my couch once when a work trip got extended. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. Nothing to suggest this. But I guess this didn't start with the wedding. It just became obvious with it. Looking back, there were cracks. Like when I came home for Thanksgiving 2 years ago and Nate told me he was thinking of proposing. He was vague, still figuring out timing, he'd said. Mom had practically shushed him mid-sentence. I thought it was because it was too early to share, not because they were planning to make it a family affair -1. Or the time last summer when I offered to host Christmas at my place. Everyone said they were keeping it small and travel was tricky this year. But then I saw the photos on Mom's Instagram, Nate's apartment lit up like a Hallmark movie. All of them gathered around a fireplace, wearing matching pajamas. Each of those moments had stung a little, but I brushed them off. Life gets busy, I told myself. People make plans. Miscommunications happen. That's what I told myself until now. Until 200 people gathered at a lakeside venue, and no one thought I deserved a chair. I started thinking back further, remembering little moments that didn't seem like much at the time, like how Dad always seemed to play peacekeeper, but never actually took my side. Or how Mom would compliment Nate's job promotions like he was collecting gold stars, but never asked how my work was going unless it was to suggest I try something more stable. And birthdays. Oh, the birthdays. Nate got surprise parties, custom cakes. I got texts and sometimes a re-gifted bottle of wine. At the time, I laughed it off. He's the golden child, I'd joke to friends. I'm just the extra. But when the extra doesn't show up, suddenly they're heartbroken. I wish I could say I was shocked. But I wasn't. Not really. Not in my gut. I think some part of me already knew. The wedding just ripped the curtain down. And now I had to decide what to do with that. Whether to pretend it didn't happen, whether to reply to Dad's message with something polite and forgiving, or whether I was finally done pretending. I didn't reply. Not that day. Not the day after either. But I started paying attention, replaying things, watching the way people spoke to me, remembering who showed up when I moved apartments last year, who returned my calls, who asked me how I was doing without trying to fix me. Because if my absence at the wedding hurt them so much, why hadn't my absence from their planning done the same? That question kept circling my head. Every time I opened my phone, every time I saw another photo, every time I scrolled past the smiling faces of people I used to call family. And that's when I noticed something else. There was one photo, one I hadn't seen before, posted by a mutual friend, not a relative. It was a group shot behind the groom and bride. Just off-center, standing casually with a drink in hand, my ex, smiling like she belonged there. I tapped the photo, expanded it. There she was, Jenna. The girl I dated for almost 3 years. The one who broke up with me 18 months ago because she needed space and wasn't ready for something serious. There she was, wearing a pale blue bridesmaid's dress, hugging her waist, laughing with someone I didn't recognize. And standing beside her, my brother, hand on her lower back, smiling. The timeline snapped together. And that, I think, was the moment it all shifted. Not the wedding. Not the text. Not the photos. But that one image, tucked away like an afterthought. That's when everything stopped being confusing and started making a cruel, perfect kind of sense. I didn't blow up. I didn't rage. I just stared. And the silence that followed, it wasn't hollow. It was the beginning of something. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than screaming. After I saw that photo, I didn't slam the phone or throw it across the room like you'd expect in some dramatic breakup scene. I just sat there, really still. There was no music, no TV buzzing in the background. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak from the old ceiling fan above me. My brain wasn't racing. It was organizing, not panicking. Sorting. Jenna. My brother. A wedding I wasn't invited to. A heartbroken text 4 days later. The longer I looked at the photo, the clearer it became. The way Nate's hand sat so comfortably at the small of her back. The closeness. Her smile, not the polite kind you throw around at parties, but the real one, the one I used to earn after inside jokes and late-night drives and the dumb way I'd sing in the car. That was my smile. I remembered it because I used to chase it. Now it was in his wedding photos, and no one told me. Not her. Not him. Not even my parents. You have to understand, Jenna wasn't just some random ex. She was in my life for 3 years. The first girl I brought home to meet my parents. The first person I'd ever seriously imagined a future with. She and I had been rocky toward the end, sure, but we hadn't ended with hatred, just distance. She said she was burnt out, that she needed space to figure herself out. The breakup was quiet and sad and full of loose threads. She cried. I cried. We promised we'd stay on decent terms, maybe even reconnect someday when things made more sense. Apparently, things made sense a lot sooner for her than they did for me. I scrolled further, fingers numb, eyes unfocused. Another photo, this one from the rehearsal dinner. Jenna seated next to Nate, her hand over his on the table, both of them laughing with my mom. My mom, her smile beaming like she just won the lottery. I didn't even know they knew each other well. I mean, Nate had met her a few times at family gatherings, but never anything intimate. He'd never asked about her, never seemed particularly interested. I used to tell him about our relationship, like you do with a brother. I confided in him when we were arguing, when I was planning our anniversary trip, when I thought maybe I'd propose. He always played it cool, like he didn't care either way. Told me relationships were complicated and that I shouldn't rush anything. Looking back now, those conversations feel like landmines I stepped on without knowing. There were no photos of their first date. No timeline to show when it all shifted. Just this. The reveal. Fully formed. Like I'd missed an entire movie and only caught the last 10 minutes. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch, the light from my phone screen dimmed, but always on, feeding the storm in my stomach. Every little moment between them that I could remember, every exchange I brushed off, every time I thought she lingered in conversation with Nate too long, it replayed itself in a sickening loop. I felt like a fool. Worse than a fool. I felt played. The next morning, I called my best friend, Devin. He answered on the second ring, with that half-asleep voice he gets when I wake him too early. "You up?" I asked. "Now I am." "What's up? You saw the wedding photos?" "Yeah, man." I was going to say something, but figured, wait, you weren't there. I paused. "No, Dev, I wasn't invited." A beat of silence. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" I explained everything. The Facebook scroll. The text from my dad. The photo. Jenna. His reaction was somewhere between stunned and furious. At one point, he asked, did they hit their heads or something? How do you not invite your own brother to your wedding, especially when you're marrying his ex? I didn't have an answer, but the more I thought about it, the more I started piecing together just how deep this went. This wasn't some mistake. It wasn't an awkward oversight. It was deliberate. Coordinated. Protected. I spent the next few days playing it back in my mind. I remembered a conversation with Mom last Christmas, how she kept saying Nate had really matured this year, and how, sometimes love happens in the strangest places. At the time, I thought she was talking about him settling down in general, but now? That was probably about Jenna. They were already together back then. I started to spiral. Not in a dramatic, losing my mind kind of way. More like a cold, surgical unraveling. I called our cousin Meredith, the only family member who ever felt remotely neutral in our endless family favoritism circus. She answered while jogging, her breath coming in spurts. "Hey, Luke. Everything okay? Meredith, were you at the wedding?" Her silence said everything. "I just need to know one thing," I said, voice tight. "How long have they been together?" She hesitated. "Look, I didn't know the full story. I thought maybe you did. I mean, it's been a while, right? Since you and Jenna." I didn't reply. "They started showing up to family stuff together maybe 6 months ago. Your mom acted like it was totally normal, like it had your blessing or something." "My blessing?" "I didn't know, Luke. I swear I figured someone would have. God, this is messed up." I ended the call politely. I don't remember much after that. Just a feeling like the room had tilted sideways and gravity was off. That day, I didn't eat, didn't work, didn't shower. Just stared. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the place apart. But all I could do was sit there, paralyzed by the reality that everyone had known except me. And no one, not one person, had thought I deserved the truth. Not even Nate. Not even Jenna. Not even my parents. The betrayal wasn't just that they were together. It was that my entire family knew. They'd smiled, posed for pictures, toasted champagne flutes under fairy lights. All while I sat in my apartment, completely unaware, still thinking maybe next holiday we'd all see each other again. Maybe this year they'd come to me for Thanksgiving. Maybe I'd finally be enough for Mom to brag about to the relatives. But I wasn't even enough to get a seat at the table. The breaking point came a week later, when Nate finally called me. The name popped up on my screen like it hadn't done in months. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hey," I said. His voice was too cheerful. "Luke. Hey, man. Been meaning to call. Sorry for the delay. Honeymoon planning's been chaos." I didn't say anything. "You doing okay?" he asked. "Dad said you seem distant." "Is that what he said?" A beat. "Yeah. Listen, I know you saw the wedding stuff. I'm really sorry, man. We weren't sure how to what?" I interrupted. "How to tell your brother you're marrying the woman he loved?" He went quiet. I waited. "It just happened," he said eventually. "We ran into each other after you guys ended things, and there was a connection. We didn't mean for it to be serious, but then it was." "How long, Luke? How long?" He exhaled. "Almost a year." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Almost a year. So, they'd been together while I still thought there was a chance Jenna and I could work things out. While I was sending those awkward texts, while I was grieving the relationship, they were already building a new one behind my back, under the smiling gaze of my family. And they hadn't just hidden it. They'd celebrated it. "You didn't invite me," I said. "Not even as a guest. You didn't even warn me. You just acted like I wasn't real." "We didn't want to hurt you," he said softly. "Then why'd you do it?" I don't know if he had an answer. Probably he didn't. He just wanted what he wanted, and I was inconvenient. "I've always had your back," I said, my voice shaking. "When you got fired, I covered your rent. When you flunked out of your first job, I helped rewrite your resume. When you crashed my car, I didn't ask you to pay for it. And this? This is how you repay me. Luke, please. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I don't care what you meant. I care what you did. He started to say something else, but I hung up. I sat there for a long time after that, the air thick with betrayal. I wasn't just mourning a relationship anymore. I was mourning a family. A sense of belonging I'd held on to like a fool. A lifetime of playing the role of the dependable son, the overlooked sibling, the one who always kept the peace. That guy, he was gone. I didn't rage. I didn't send a long email. I didn't post a dramatic call-out online. But I started writing something else, a plan. Rock bottom doesn't always come with flashing lights and sirens. Sometimes it shows up quietly, like a weight you didn't notice until it starts to crush your lungs. For me, it was a Tuesday afternoon. I just walked into the grocery store down the street, just trying to buy eggs and bread, and saw Mom. She was in the produce section, holding a head of lettuce and laughing at something the woman beside her said. I froze. My gut clenched, not with anger, but with something worse, shame. I didn't want her to see me. I didn't want to hear whatever lie she'd crafted to soothe her conscience. I didn't want her fake warmth or her eyes pretending like none of this happened. So, I turned around and walked right out, left my basket there, got in my car, sat behind the wheel, staring at my hands. That was the moment. That's when it really sank in. I couldn't even exist in the same space as my own mother without bracing for emotional impact. I went home, turned off my phone, and disappeared. For weeks, I went on autopilot. I took fewer client calls. I missed deadlines. I declined invitations, not that there were many. Devin tried to check in, but I kept our conversations short. I was tired of everything. Of pretending like I wasn't broken. Of holding back the urge to text Jenna. Of scrolling past more wedding photos every time I opened Instagram. My apartment became a mess of pizza boxes, laundry piles, and unopened mail. The only consistent thing was the dull, quiet ache that lived in my chest. But the world didn't stop just because I felt like it should have. Rent was due. Bills needed paying. And somewhere under the wreckage of my pride, I still had clients. So, I showed up, slowly, quietly. I took a couple small jobs, web fixes, redesigns, some WordPress themes for boutique brands. The work didn't make me feel better, but it made the hours go faster. Then, something shifted. One afternoon, I got an email from a guy I used to contract with a few years ago. Phil, a tech startup founder with a ridiculous beard and an obsession with coffee that tasted like burnt tree bark. He needed someone to rebuild the back end of his company's new app. I remembered your work, he wrote. You still available? I almost said no. I almost deleted the email. But something in me clicked. It was the first time in weeks someone had spoken to me like I mattered, like I wasn't just someone's discarded brother or ex-boyfriend. I wrote back, we scheduled a call, and just like that, I was back in. The project was intense, 3 months, tight deadlines, complex architecture. But I threw myself into it. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about distraction. It was about control. Building something again, fixing something from the ground up, when I couldn't fix my own family. I worked late into the night, sometimes until 3 a.m. My apartment stayed a mess. But my code? It was clean, sharp, tight. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I remembered who I was. I wasn't Nate's shadow. I wasn't a backup son. I wasn't the one who got left out. I was Luke, the guy who built websites in high school for local bands, who started freelancing in college, who ran his own one-man studio for 6 years. I had clients in 3 countries. I'd helped build 2 startups from scratch. I wasn't just drifting, I was underrated. And that realization? It hit hard. One night in early fall, I took a walk around the lake near my apartment. It was late, the air crisp, the sky filled with stars. I didn't bring my phone. I didn't listen to music. I just walked. For the first time in months, I felt still. Not happy. Not healed. But still. Like I wasn't going to shatter. Every time someone mentioned family or weddings or betrayal, I was breathing. That was enough. But something else was changing, too. I started going through my photos. Not the wedding ones. Mine. My travels. My work. My friends. The memories that weren't tied to Nate or Jenna or my parents. I found an old photo of me at a coding boot camp I'd helped lead 2 years ago, smiling, confident, explaining something to a group of eager college kids. That guy, he was still in there. So, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I rebuilt my website. Not just a portfolio. A brand. A platform. I cleaned up my client list, updated my testimonials, added new case studies. I hired a designer friend to redo my logo. I even wrote a blog post, How to Build When You're Burned Out. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't viral. But it was honest. And people responded. Emails came in. Bookings. A small bump in site traffic. Then a DM from someone at a mid-size creative agency. They were hiring part-time contractors and liked my voice. A month later, I signed a retainer with them. And just like that, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building again. My daily life changed, too. I started waking up early, not from stress, but on purpose. I made coffee. Opened the windows. Let light into my cave of a living room. I bought a plant. It died. I bought another one. It didn't. Small wins. I reconnected with Devon. Started saying yes to things again, dinners, game nights, even a hiking trip I would have avoided before. Therapy came next. Not because I broke down, but because I didn't want to again. I found a guy named Mark. Quiet. Sharp. Didn't push too hard. Our first session, I said, I think I lost my family. He nodded. We unpacked it slowly. The favoritism. The silence. The betrayal. The way I always felt like I had to earn love while Nate just received it. The way I shrunk myself to avoid being a burden. How I clung to crumbs of affection like they were meals. Mark didn't offer miracles, but he listened. And for the first time, someone validated the idea that maybe I wasn't crazy. That maybe the hurt I'd carried since childhood wasn't just bad luck. It was a pattern, and patterns could be broken. Meanwhile, my parents stayed silent. Not a word from Mom. No apology, no explanation. I heard from Meredith once. She sent a text saying she hoped I was okay. That Nate and Jenna had moved into a new place. That Mom was trying to smooth things over. I didn't respond, not because I was angry, but because I was done filling silence with forgiveness. One night, Devon and I were grabbing drinks, and he asked, "So, what's next? Are you just cutting them off forever?" I didn't have an answer. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. Not in the way I thought it would be. I wasn't looking to torch bridges or write angry letters or post callouts online. I didn't need them to grovel. I just wanted to stop bleeding. And I had. Slowly. Quietly. But I was watching. Paying attention. Because sometimes revenge isn't about fire and fury. Sometimes it's about clarity. About waiting for the right moment, not out of spite, but precision. And when it came, I'd know. Because something had shifted in me. I wasn't the extra anymore. I wasn't the one who got left behind. I was the one who got up anyway. It started with an email. Just a short one. Hey Luke. Long time no talk, from a name I hadn't thought about in years, Taylor Briner. We'd gone to college together. Same dorm, same computer science cohort. She'd been smart, sharp, with a brutal sense of humor and a laugh that could cut through any bad day. We lost touch after graduation when she moved out west and joined a tech firm in Seattle. But there she was, suddenly in my inbox like a ghost knocking politely. Subject line, quick question and maybe an opportunity. I opened it. She was launching a new platform, something big, venture-backed, and early stage. A cross between a creative freelancer hub and an AI-powered resource planner. We're building tools for the next wave of remote creatives, she wrote. I need someone I can trust to lead dev on the infrastructure side. Your name came up more than once. It felt surreal, like the universe was giving me something I hadn't asked for, but desperately needed. I hopped on a Zoom with her that night. She looked older, but in a good way. More focused. More powerful. We caught up quickly, talked specs, timelines, team dynamics. The contract wasn't just generous, it was strategic, high visibility, strong equity, long-term potential. She didn't just want me to build the foundation. She wanted me to be part of the core. I said yes before we even hung up. And just like that, I had a new engine. For the first few weeks, I was drowning in work. But it wasn't the desperate, avoid your feelings kind of drowning I'd done after the wedding. This was purposeful. Structured. I was in team calls, sprint planning meetings, GitHub threads. I was writing clean code, and helping juniors debug their logic, staying up late to build scalable systems that actually mattered. I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was building someone else's vision. I was valuable. And that's when the idea started growing, not revenge. Not at first. Just curiosity. You see, when you get burned by people you trusted, people who made you feel invisible, it doesn't end with the pain. It starts there. And then slowly, you begin to wonder, how long has this been happening? What did I miss? What else have they hidden? You stop assuming good intentions. You start digging. One night, after a particularly long sprint review, I poured a glass of wine, sat down at my desk, and opened an old Google Drive folder I hadn't touched in over a year. It was labeled Family Docs, just receipts, bills, joint agreements, stuff from when I used to help Dad with tech things or when I managed the family vacation rental properties online listings for free. A long time ago, he made me the admin of the shared Google account we'd used to keep everything organized. Apparently, he never removed me. I wasn't looking for anything specific, but the more I clicked through, the more the shape of things started to twist. There were spreadsheets, annual taxes, invoices, maintenance logs. One labeled property_lakeside. I opened it. That's when I remembered, the wedding hadn't taken place at some fancy resort or Airbnb. It had been at our family's lake house. The one we used to visit every summer. The one I hadn't been to in 3 years because there was a plumbing issue and no one's really using it anymore. But clearly someone had been using it. The spreadsheet confirmed it. There were transactions listed for furniture rentals, catering, security, dated just a few weeks before the wedding. Expenses paid from a shared family account. My name was still on that account. I'd helped set it up when Dad got overwhelmed with taxes, and they'd used it without asking. Without telling me. They'd thrown a $40,000 wedding on property I technically co-owned, with my name on the books, and didn't even have the decency to send a text. That's when the setup began. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. Step 1 was simple, make sure everything was clean on my end. I backed up all the documents, every spreadsheet, every invoice, every calendar invite from the past 5 years. I logged the IP addresses. I downloaded PDF copies. I wrote a version history of every edit made to anything I had access to. I wanted proof. Not for court, necessarily. Just for me. Step 2, call my lawyer. I hadn't talked to Rachel in a while. She was a no-nonsense, old-school friend of the family. Used to help me set up my LLC back when I first started freelancing. I scheduled a consultation under the pretense of needing to clean up some property ownership issues. When we got on the call, I explained everything, minus the emotional mess. Just the facts, the shared account, the property, the unauthorized use. She whistled. Luke, this is not good for them. I mean, do you want to press charges? Not yet, I said. But I do want to know what my options are. We spent an hour going over logistics. Turns out my parents had never formally removed me from any of the ownership docs. Technically, the lake house was still in a family trust with my name as one of the beneficiaries. That meant I had every right to demand records, block future events, or even call for an audit. It also meant that the $40,000 wedding technically required my signature for any major renovations or rentals. They hadn't gotten it. Step 3, gather allies. This wasn't about rallying troops. I wasn't going to march through Thanksgiving dinner with printouts and accusations. But I did start having quiet conversations. Meredith, for example. I invited her to coffee. She looked nervous, like she expected me to finally explode. Instead, I asked a simple question, how long have they been keeping things from me? She sighed. Told me about how Mom had started treating Jenna like a daughter-in-law long before the breakup. How Nate started showing up to family events without telling me, brushing off my absence like I was busy with work. How every time she asked about me, Mom would get tight-lipped. He's figuring things out, she'd say. Don't pry. I thanked Meredith. Then I told her about the property. The account. The unpaid debt of inclusion. Her face shifted. She hadn't known. And now she did. I wasn't looking to turn Meredith against them, but it was important someone else saw what I saw. That this wasn't just about feelings. It was about choices. Repeated ones. Financial ones. Legal ones. The next few weeks, I continued my quiet rebuild. My job with Taylor's startup was going better than I expected. We launched our beta, got covered by 2 mid-tier tech blogs, and signed a few big-name clients. I kept my head down, kept working. But in the background, the gears were turning. I filed a formal request with the family trust accountant, asking for an audit of expenses and upcoming plans for the lake house. No accusations. Just transparency, as Rachel suggested. It was the kind of move that sent a ripple without making a splash. I was asserting my presence without lighting anything on fire. A week later, I got a call from Dad. He sounded tired. Cautious. Luke, he said, got your email. Wanted to talk. I let the silence stretch. You know, you've always had a share in the lake house, he continued. That's never been in question. Then why was I never consulted? He exhaled. There wasn't time. The wedding came together fast. 4 months of planning isn't fast, Dad. It was complicated. No, it was convenient. You didn't want to deal with me. More silence. Finally, he said, look, if this is about Jenna, it's not. I lied. Because it was. Of course, it was. But it was also about them. About the erasure. About how they'd made me a ghost in my own life. I wasn't seeking closure. I was making sure they felt the weight of my absence. We'll talk as a family soon, Dad said, trying to sound reasonable. Figure this out. Sure, I said. Let me know when everyone's ready to be honest. I hung up. But I didn't wait. Because I wasn't just setting a boundary. I was setting the board. It happened quietly. No explosions. No confrontations. Just a chain of polite, official notices that turned my family's world upside down. The kind of revenge you don't see coming until it's already halfway through your house, carrying your favorite chair out the door. By late October, the leaves had started to fall. I was 3 months into my new role with Taylor's startup, and we just signed a major investment deal that bumped my equity into 6 figures on paper. I was sleeping better, smiling more, taking care of myself in small, boring ways, like cooking my own food and answering texts from friends within a reasonable time frame. That was when I got a notification from the trust accountant. He'd completed the audit. The numbers were worse than I expected. Over the past 12 months, the shared family property account, where I still had legal ownership, had been used to fund $40,000 plus for the lakeside wedding, $9,200 for landscaping upgrades, $6,400 for venue cleaning and painting, $3,000 in floral design and tent rentals, $2,100 for guest parking and off-site transport, and most notably, $17,000 for a guest dock renovation, marked for reception launch viewing. That last one, I remember Dad claiming the dock was too rotted to fix 3 years ago when I offered to help renovate it so I could take a few friends up for the summer. Now, apparently, it was wedding-worthy. What made this more egregious was that all those transactions had been approved and paid through the trust account, meaning they were technically made using my money. My name was on the paperwork. My ownership status hadn't changed. They didn't just exclude me. They used me. Rachel was furious when I showed her. "You could take them to court right now and win," she said, easily. But I didn't want a courtroom. I wanted closure. Real. Undeniable. Permanent. So I asked her to draft a formal letter. Not aggressive. Not dramatic. Just firm. It requested full reimbursement for half of all wedding-related expenses, dock renovations, and unapproved improvements, along with an offer I was willing to sell them my share of the lake house at market value. And because I'd had the foresight to pay a property assessor the month before, I knew exactly what that value was, $960,000. Which meant my share was $480,000. We sent the letter certified, with return receipt requested, and I waited. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Mom. She didn't sound angry. She sounded hurt. That passive, gasping kind of hurt she always used when her control slipped. "Luke," she said, "I just got your letter. This is so much money. Where do you expect us to get this from?" "I don't. I expect you to refinance or liquidate, or we sell the property." "You'd really sell your share of the family lake house over this?" "You already did, when you used it without me." She didn't speak for a moment. I could hear the tremble in her breath. Then she said, "This isn't like you." "You're right. It's not." That was the last time I spoke to her. A week after that, I received an email from a real estate lawyer representing my parents and Nate. They wanted to negotiate. They offered me $175,000 as a fair compromise. I declined. I didn't respond with anger. I responded with an official valuation, screenshots of the trust agreement, copies of the audit, and a clear line, $480,000, or I force a sale. They called my bluff. And I followed through. Rachel filed the petition. Because of the trust setup, I had the right to request a sale through court if no buyout agreement was reached within 90 days. They tried to stall. Claimed emotional value. Even tried suggesting I had previously verbally relinquished my share. But every stall tactic only made things worse. Turns out, when you force a sale of a family property, things get very public. A listing went up in January. Charming 5-bedroom lakefront property, perfect for events or full-time living. The real estate agent posted glossy photos of the newly painted dock, the landscaped gardens, the wide-open reception space, the same space where my brother got married. The same dock where they toasted a new life I wasn't invited to witness. The offers came quickly. By February, the house sold for $975,000. After taxes and fees, I received a wire transfer of $471,000. Clean. Legal. Final. A week later, I posted a simple message on Facebook. No names, no gloating. Just this, funny how people call you dramatic for setting boundaries after they spend years making you feel invisible. Anyway, thanks for the dock upgrade. It got 142 likes, 17 comments, a few private messages from extended family. Most just said, "Wow." Or, "I had no idea." One of my cousins wrote, "Proud of you for standing up for yourself. You deserved better." But the best message came from someone unexpected, Jenna. It popped up on a Wednesday night, out of nowhere. I heard about the house. I didn't know everything. I'm sorry for all of it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I blocked her. Not because I was angry, but because she didn't deserve a seat at my table anymore. Nate tried calling a few times, too. Once he even left a voicemail. Luke, man, this whole thing's gotten out of hand. We didn't think it would go like this. But that's the thing about people who take you for granted. They never think it'll cost them anything. They assume your silence means consent. That your kindness means weakness. That your absence from their celebrations means you're too small to matter. Until you bill them for the venue. The last I heard, Nate and Jenna had to move out of their condo and back in with mom and dad for a while. The sale of the lake house tanked their finances more than they expected. They'd taken out loans for the wedding, banking on using the lake house for events in the future to recoup the cost, but that future was gone now. Meanwhile, I moved. Used part of the money to buy a sleek little condo downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Hardwood floors. A short walk to the best coffee in the city. I kept working with Taylor. Invested in a few small startups on the side. Got a cat. Started dating again, slowly, carefully. But I never reached back. Not to mom. Not to Nate. Not to the people who sat on that dock and toasted a new family while pretending I didn't exist. Because I finally understood something they never did, being invited isn't the same as being included. And now? Now they're the ones locked out. Because I changed the locks. And this time, I kept the key. So, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family, even when it meant breaking ties? Tell me what you think in the comments below, I really want to know.